Hey. So I want to talk about something that I think almost everyone universally experiences. And I want to go into the layers of how this phenomenon occurs. So many people are afraid to feel their feelings, and especially actually to feel their anger. They are also afraid to express their anger. And so many people say things like, oh, I thought anger was bad, you know, like they just automatically thought that anger was bad. And anger is a negative emotion. I shouldn't be feeling that if I'm a spiritual person, I should always be in gratitude. I hear like really weird things. So I want to talk about healthy anger, and I want to talk about when you feel that and why it's important, and why so many people feel uncomfortable feeling their anger, expressing their anger, and especially this thing, which happens socially, where when you express your anger, oftentimes other people feel uncomfortable. So most people are afraid of making other people feel uncomfortable, because that's not the case, right? People's experience is their choice. So first of all, I'll teach a little bit about the Wheel of Consent. This is my version of the Wheel of Consent. This has nothing to do with the original Wheel of Consent, which is taught by Dr. Betty Martin. So you can look her up and the original Wheel of Consent. In my opinion, when someone expresses anger, usually it's when they are what I consider the power position. They have more power in the hierarchy and they are taking outside of consent. Also, they can be accepting outside of consent. Those are really technical terms. But basically, when you're in the power position, you're creating your reality. You can create your reality in a masculine or feminine way. Today, I'll be talking about the masculine way. When you create your reality and you're forcing someone to do something, or you're manipulating someone to do something, you can often use anger as a tool to get the other person to capitulate in the moment, to coerce the other person. So this is why so many people have a bad taste in their mouths with anger, because every single time they experienced anger, it was because someone else was manipulating them or forcing them. And oftentimes this person had more power in the hierarchy, and this was used to make you do something you didn't want to do. So that's why anger has like a bad rap, you can say. So if someone is feeling angry towards you, oftentimes you're not allowed to express anger. You're supposed to just kind of take it if you were lower in the hierarchy. So like, for example, in the home, usually moms are allowed to yell at their kids. But when kids yell back at their moms, it's like, oh no, that, how dare you talk back? How dare you, get out of line or whatever, right? We're taught things like this. Boss is allowed to yell at the subordinate, right? They're allowed to have a hissy fit and just be emotionally like a child. Whereas the subordinate is never supposed to yell at the boss, is never supposed to express displeasure, right? At the boss, especially for whatever the boss is doing. So there's like a one-way street when there is hierarchy with who's allowed to express anger. Like anger is given to the person in the position of power. So if the other person is expressing anger, oftentimes you are not allowed to express anger, which is why I put in parentheses. You're not allowed to express anger, and instead you are going to feel fear and shame, most likely. So this happens when you're outside of consent, which means you're outside of this wheel. The other person is crossing your boundaries. This area here is your boundaries. And when they're crossing your boundaries, most likely you feel fear and shame. They don't necessarily have to be actively expressing anger. They can just cross your boundaries. They can just violate you, and you're going to feel fear and shame. You're not going to feel safe. So this can happen if, you're at the store and someone shorts you on the change. They may not even have done it consciously or on purpose, but when you go home and you notice, or when you're at the store and you notice, you might feel this, you might feel, because you're technically stolen from, even if it was not on purpose, you might feel fear and or shame, or both. Anyway, you won't feel safe, and definitely your boundaries were crossed because energy was stolen from you. That's the definition of crossing your boundaries. So the other person doesn't necessarily have to express anger, but when you are violated, the vibrations associated are fear and shame, and oftentimes the anger is suppressed for various reasons. So Okay, I talked about how socially, a lot of times you're, in quotation marks, not allowed to express your anger because you have less power in the hierarchy. Also, a lot of people are afraid of their own anger. They're like out of control. And so if they express anger, they're going to lose control. So let's say at the store you're shorted, right? And you're given less change than you're supposed to be given. It wasn't on purpose, but you're afraid that if you express yourself, you're going to lose control. It's going to come out in some kind of way where you just can't keep it together, and you're going to feel naked. You're going to feel like a crazy person. You're going to feel like maybe, like somehow you made things worse by expressing yourself. Does this make sense? Like a lot of people feel like this, like they kind of already feel out of control, and so therefore to like open the lid to their anger is to invite in more trouble. So they'd rather just stay tight and deal with the fear and shame and deal with being in the violated position, because they're afraid to go into the violator position. Because when people are outside of consent, whether or not it's on purpose, someone's going to be in the violator position and someone's going to be in the violated position. Again, this may not even be on purpose, might be an accident, but outside of consent, those are the positions. So a lot of people do a dumb thing and try to like make themselves okay with the situation. You can't you can't have a feeling and then put a thought on top of it and go, oh, I'm not having that feeling anymore, it's fine. That literally can't happen. Like if a flower is burning to death, it can't just have a thought and be like, I'm okay, like the fact is it is losing life force energy and its boundaries are being violated, and something has to be done right now or else it's literally going to die. So similarly, if your boundaries are being violated, you can't just be like, oh, it's okay, I'm fine with it, I have flexible boundaries. Or a lot of people like to think, they gaslight themselves and they go, oh, I'm flexible. No, that means you don't even know what your boundaries are and you don't even feel them. So you're really, really bad steward for yourself. You're like the flower on fire going like, oh, I'm flexible. A lot of people like to think it's like their ego. It's like a badge of honor. Like, I'm adaptable, like I go with the flow, like I don't have boundaries. They even think of boundaries as a bad thing. So this is really confused. If you are saying these kinds of statements about yourself and you're really proud of that kind of thing, and you actually think that's a part of your identity, you are confused, because boundaries are very clear. I mean, that's the definition of boundaries. They're very, very clear. And if you don't feel what your boundaries are, that means you can't take care of yourself. Okay. So when people say, oh, it's okay, they're trying to push themselves back into consent by like making a verbal statement. Like it's okay. When it's not okay, it's not okay. And what ends up happening is that anger, remember previously, this person wasn't allowed to feel their anger, right? They feel it, but they weren't allowed to express it. So there's like a repressed anger. That repressed anger over time will turn into depression and or clinical depression, because the anger needs to go somewhere. It's there, it's real, and you are directing it towards yourself by being violent to yourself by saying, oh, it's okay. So you can't, what I'm saying is you can't say it's okay and then just push yourself back into consent. That is illogical. That is the flower who's burning to death going, oh, it's okay. That doesn't make it okay. that doesn't make it okay. So what is happening here? So this is what I want to delineate, like how people start to become like seriously like disembodied. They're like floating above their bodies and like they're just like disconnected. They're not feeling their feelings. They don't know what they feel, and therefore they take really bad care of themselves, and they get really scared of their own anger because that anger is like building up. So you can imagine that repressed anger building up because you don't know what your feelings are and you don't express them and you're afraid to be out of control, etc. What goes on is that what I call in the inner wheel, which is like you with you, not you with other people, you with you. You start to violate yourself. Like you're the violator. So when you go, oh, it's okay, you're lying and you're violating yourself. And this is, in my opinion, like the original sin, where you have a feeling you can't handle it and you lie to yourself about what you're feeling and you act as if your internal experience is something completely else, and that's not true. And so the truth builds up over time and becomes like bad experiences in life or chronic disease or a low vibration, or you're not healed, all these things. You're not in touch with your intuition, you're not in touch with abundance, you don't trust yourself, you don't trust other people, you have bad intimate relationships, you might have a bad sex life. Like all these things happen because you lie to yourself about your basic experience of being in or out of your boundaries. So when you are your own violator, okay, this is the violator position, when you, and this is the victim position, when you are your own violator on the inner wheel, so this is you with you, then what happens in the outer wheel, which is you and someone else. So that's like, that's what I would call that classic wheel of consent. You in the outside world, you with other people. This is what usually people think about when they think of the term of boundaries. They think about this idea of just saying no to other people, which is so simplified and like stupid. Anyway, sorry. So in the outer wheel, which is what people classically think of as boundaries, the other person is your violator because you're outside of consent. You are here outside of the wheel of consent. You're outside your boundaries. And you're going, oh, it's okay. Okay. So when you violate yourself on the inside, you are agreeing to people violating you on the outside. You are here feeling anger, but you're pretending you're not. And you're trying to fake your way into being in your boundaries when you're not. Okay. So what ends up happening is you create your reality. When you violate yourself over and over and over again on the inside, you start to attract experiences on the outside where people violate you again and again and again on the outside. So many things. I mean, it depends on you and your life and your story and your ego and all this kind of stuff. But things like people keep shorting you at the store. They just keep shorting you, whether it's on purpose because it's just a penny, and they're like, ah, it's just a penny, so they just don't give you the penny and change, or they kind of blip out and they give you the wrong change, not on purpose, or the charge was wrong. Like in the system, it says like $4, but the tag and why you bought that thing was, it was supposed to be $2, so you get, something like that happens, or you get like double charged by accident, like your credit card has a double charge, and you have to go through a lot of trouble to get that first thing uncharged. Like these kinds of things, these are like financial psychic attacks, by the way. And when you are okay violating your own boundaries, you really invite this kind of thing in on the outside. I know another person who has such a particular thing. She's so in a victim mode and really hyper anxious, like really, really anxious. Like I really don't like her energy. Um, she experiences repeatedly really violent things, like people taking a razor blade, cutting open her bag and stealing her wallet that way. I've like never heard of anyone in my personal life where that happens to this happens to that person a lot. Okay. So, you know, you create your reality. You can also have boyfriends who violate you in a certain kind of way, or people who violate your time in a certain kind of way. There are so many ways to become accustomed to being violated and having your energy stolen from you, whether that's your personal life force energy or some permutation of that, like your house. Maybe you have someone living in your house that you didn't really want them to be there. But now they're there and they won't leave. This is more of a parasitical kind of thing, but it just depends on you and your story. So what ends up happening is when you violate yourself on the inside, okay, this is the inner wheel. This is you with you on the inside. Technically, it's your mind violating your body. Like who says it's okay? Your mind, right? Who says, no, 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 it's not okay. I am feeling scared and shameful and angry. It's your body. So your mind is violating your body. Okay. It's you with you on the inside. When you're violating yourself on the inside, on the outside, when you interact with other people, this is another person, they're going to violate you in your exterior world because the outside reflects the inside. All right. So now you can see a little bit about how people like gaslight themselves and start to become accustomed to not feeling their boundaries and not feeling in particular their anger because number one, if you're used to being on a certain aspect in the hierarchy, you're not allowed to express your anger societally. And number two, you've bottled up your anger so much inside that you're afraid that when you express it, it's just going to come out bad. And for a lot of people, when they like take it and take it and take it and take it and finally express how they feel, it usually comes out as verbal abuse. And it's like, you know, like bad, like it comes out as like a black magic spell. It's just bad verbal abuse and it won't stop. You know, this person has like no control over it. It's almost like, you know, like you're drunk or something, like there's like very little control and the mouth won't stop talking the bad things, right? A lot of people are just out of control. So, okay, what is supposed to happen? How do you solve this? How can you feel your anger and express it in a healthy way and take control over yourself and your being and have self-sovereignty and self-respect? And let's face it, how can you have dignity? How can you have dignity? Because the people who are out of control and afraid of themselves, you're lacking dignity. All right. So in the inner wheel, that's you with you, your mind and your body. Usually your mind is in the power position because what ends up happening when you decide to do something? If your mind says no, it's a no, right? Like if you're supposed to get up off the couch, but your mind's like, you're not getting up off the couch, right? So, like, even if your body desperately needs something, it's like thirsty, but you're fucking lazy and you're on the couch. You're not going to get yourself water unless your mind agrees. So, usually, your mind has more power in the hierarchy than your body. So, your mind is the caretaker of your body. Your mind is the mother and the father of your body. And therefore, usually, it's your mind up here who's either violating your body or upholding your body's boundaries. So in this respect, your mind is in the masculine and your body is in the feminine. So whatever your body feels, whatever your body's boundaries are, like that flower that's on fire, it has boundaries. Its body has boundaries. And if your mind defends your body's boundaries with your life, if the masculine defends the feminine with his life, then you have integrity. So that is being inside of consent. That is being within your own boundaries in your inner wheel. That's you respecting yourself. That's you having dignity. You respect your own boundaries and you defend them with your life. Okay, so this is where anger comes into play. This is where anger comes into play because what is anger? Anger is simply the feeling you have when your boundaries have been violated. Because when your boundaries are violated, you feel the feminine feelings of fear and shame because you're in the violated position. This position is necessarily feminine. It's under the horizon line. Things are being done to this person. This person has no agency in the specific moment. So the fear and shame are feminine feelings. These are not the feelings of someone who has yet developed the courage to defend themselves, which could happen the next moment. But in the moment of fear and shame, they're not in the moment of defending themselves, right? And as long as they repress their anger, they won't defend themselves. I mean, I think, like sports teams, warriors of any kind, of any type, from any period of in society, history, need to have that angry Mars energy for willpower. You have to feel as if you're worth defending. If you agree that you're not worth defending, if you're the it's okay person, then you think you have low value, you think your experiences have no value, you think your feelings have no value, and you think your boundaries aren't important. So there's no reason to defend anything. So you, who are supposed to take care of you, think you're not worth defending. This is really scary. If you had an adult taking care of a child who thought that the child had no value, the child's boundaries were not important, the child's feelings were not important, the child's experiences were not important, what would happen to this child? Like, I hope it stays alive. It's that will be a highly, highly abused and neglected child. And so when you treat yourself that way, which is most people, that's why it's so hard to feel your boundaries or defend your boundaries, because you've been treating yourself that it's okay kind of person. You've been treating yourself like you're not worth defending. And any warrior doesn't want to go to battle to defend a feminine who's not worth it. I think it was, I don't want to go too much into history, but I was going to mention something about ancient Rome. Okay, maybe I can say this in a high level way, but basically in ancient Rome, the army was really, really powerful, right? And ancient Rome spanned many, 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 many years. So I'm just talking about one incident where two people were vying for power, both were claiming emperor, and they had their version or their portion of the army, and they wanted to fight each other. And the army is like, no, that guy you want me to fight on the other side, I've been fighting with him for like 15 years, like as a brother. I've been fighting with him against true enemies as a brother. I'm not going to kill him for this stupid political thing. No. And so those armies saying, no, we're not going to fight our brothers on the other side for your stupid political reason, that killed the war right then and there. The political thing had to be resolved on a political level and not on the battlefield. So a warrior will not defend something that's actually not worth defending. So you won't defend your boundaries if you don't think your boundaries are worth defending, if you don't think you're feminine, meaning your feelings and your experiences or your inner child or your body, your physical body, if you don't think they're worth defending, you're just not going to defend them. That's why you're really thirsty, but you're fucking lazy and you're on the couch and you won't get up and get water. That's why you don't take care of yourself. And this is, many people are addicted to hurting themselves, actually, like addicted to hurting themselves. You know what I'm talking about. So the mind being out of control is really scary, don't you think? The mind being out of control and being addicted to hurting the body is just intensely scary. How can you have dignity under these circumstances? Okay, so inner wheel. When things are in order, your mind defends the body. The mind has integrity with its job of taking care of this whole system and will defend the body's experiences with its life. So the masculine is supposed to defend the feminine with its life. This is things being inside of consent, inside of boundaries, things being in order as opposed to disordered. Okay, so you want your inner wheel to reflect this if you want to have health around what I'm talking about. Being angry, expressing your anger in a healthy way, and dealing with this societal thing about making people feel uncomfortable. So anger is what you feel when your boundaries have been violated. Anger is what you feel when your boundaries have been violated. So on the outer wheel, if someone violates your boundaries, you should feel anger. You should feel anger because anger is a thing that flips the fear and shame, which are feminine feelings. It flips the fear and shame into a masculine thing where you start to do something. Anger is a masculine feeling. So if you feel your anger, good job. That means you're starting to feel your boundaries. So outer wheel, someone violates your boundaries, you feel that this line has been crossed, you feel your anger, good job. Now you're able to flip and do something in your masculine. Then this is what might happen. It depends on how the other person takes things. You have no control over this, and this is what you just have to deal with if you want to be able to express your anger. You have to deal with the other person experiencing you however they're going to experience you based on how much work they've done on themselves. So if someone's done like zero work on themselves, you expressing like this much displeasure, this much anger and or annoyance will scare them or piss them off, or they're going to have an overreaction kind of thing, right? You can't do anything about that. That's based on them and how much work they've done on themselves. If they've done a lot of work on themselves, you can express a lot of anger. You can like throw plates on the floor and just really express your anger, and they can hold space for it. It doesn't have to damage their inner peace if they've done a lot of work on themselves. So you have no control over someone else's experience. So what a lot of people are afraid of is when they finally feel their anger and express it, they're afraid that what they're going to do is this. They're going to flip to the violator position. So you expressing anger going to violate the other person, and they're going to be the victim. So you two remain outside of consent, but now you're the violator and they're the victim, mainly because you're expressing your anger. And what I'm saying is this is not necessarily the case. They don't have to feel violated. They don't have to. It depends on how much work they've done on themselves. But what I'm saying is it's really important to express your anger. It's really important to express your anger, even if you end up in their eyes, being here, looking like the violator in the outer wheel. You look like the violator in their experience, something you have no control over. Because oftentimes, anger is a tool used to coerce others. Anger is a tool used to coerce or manipulate others by people who have more power in the hierarchy, and what they want is immediate capitulation. Do you see the difference when you express your anger because you've been violated? You're not necessarily trying to manipulate the other person. You're not necessarily trying to coerce the other person. And you're not necessarily going to suddenly flip the social dynamic in that moment. You're not going to suddenly have more power in the hierarchy, right? But you are defending your inner child. And that's the most important thing that you could ever do in your whole entire life, is defend your inner child. This is self-integrity. This is self-respect. This is dignity. And I think we're here to actually do this, is to be humans, have feelings, have experiences, and love ourselves. And if we don't defend our boundaries, we're not loving ourselves. So it's kind of like you're you're failing at being a human, but that's okay, because that might be exactly what you want to experience, and that's a whole other thing. Anyway, that was a lot. So in the inner wheel, you are defending you. Good job, right? You have integrity with yourself. Good job. That's the inner wheel. But the cost you pay is in the outer wheel. They might feel you to be violating them, and they might feel shame and fear as a result, which is exactly the position you were in previous to your expressing your anger, right? So in the inner wheel, you have integrity. In the outer wheel, other people may perceive you to not have integrity. And it's important to note that you can't win. Like if someone's already violated you, you can't necessarily maneuver the situation so that they go, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me correct that wrong. Let me give you your energy back exactly as I took it. And everyone's like copacetic at the end. That's hardly ever going to happen. When they violate your boundaries, often it's because they don't care about your boundaries. So the best you can do is to honor your own boundaries, no matter what the social cost is, even them projecting onto you that you are now the violator. And this is what happens when you express your anger and you express your displeasure and, in quotation marks, make other people feel uncomfortable. Like, how dare you make me feel uncomfortable? You know, it can be really, really, really simple, like a child correcting its parents' pronunciation of a word, a child correcting its parents' math. Um, this is really interesting. People in countries where English is the predominant language, having to pronounce the name of someone who comes from a country where their name is not English, not, you know, and the English speaking person has difficulty pronouncing the name, that can cause shame, fear, and anger. Like, how dare you have a hard to pronounce name? Because power in the hierarchy, English predominates, right? So it's really interesting, these kinds of things. People will get mad at you for making them feel uncomfortable. And what is that? I'm going to unpack it for a second. What that is forcing them to feel their shadow, shame, and fear that they were feeling to begin with in their shadow when they decided to violate you. I want to say that again. I need to find it. Where did it go? I don't know where it went. Oh, here it is. Whatever. So when these people, right, violated your boundaries, they were feeling shame and fear in their shadow, which is why they would use anger to coerce you, to force your hand on the spot. This lacks integrity. Integrity is inside of consent, where they care about your boundaries. They're outside of consent, where they don't care about your boundaries. So they are already feeling fear and shame in their shadow. But because they have more power in the hierarchy, they don't want to feel the fear and shame. They push it on you. So you play the shadow to their ego. So when you express your anger, you're forcing them into the position they forced you into to begin with. And now they have to feel their shame and fear, which was already there. It was already there in their shadow. But what you're doing is making it come up to the surface by just being truthful, which is, that's not okay. What you're saying and doing, that's not okay. You're lacking integrity right now. And so this thing that makes people really uncomfortable, which is making other people feel uncomfortable, discomfort is already happening. Your boundaries are being violated, so you are already uncomfortable. So when you say it's okay, you're agreeing that it's okay that you can make me uncomfortable so you can stay comfortable. Like, it's okay. I'm your emotional slave, you're basically saying. But when you're like, I'm not your fucking emotional slave, I have dignity. What you're doing is not okay. And you have integrity with yourself, then what's going on is, okay, this is the weird one. Yes. So inner will. So you're having integrity with yourself. So when you're having integrity with yourself, you're raising the vibration of the interaction. So the original interaction is they gaslight you, they violate you. How do you react? Do you say it's okay? If you say it's okay, then you're agreeing to them. And then now you are both violating you. You are both party to violating you. You're violating yourself as much as they are. If they violate you and you say, hey, that's not okay, that's confrontational sometimes and uncomfortable sometimes. And people highly, highly don't want to do this. And what I'm saying is all you're doing is you're raising the vibration and you're bringing more truth into the situation by calling it for what it is, which is an out of consent experience. And you have to hold your ground and be like, this is not okay. And you have to defend your inner child with your life. You have to defend your feminine with your life. And this is how you have dignity. So when you have that dignity, that can really make people feel uncomfortable, because you know what's really interesting is there's some sort of like moral high ground. Like societally, they might still win. You know, they could have stolen something from you. It doesn't have to be money, stolen something from you, energy, something, right? They stole something from you and they can still remain having stolen it from you. But when you say, hey, that's not okay, inside they know you won. And inside, you know, you won, even if on the outside, you lost the thing, whatever that is. But on the inside, you didn't give up your own sovereignty to play into their thing. So that's the whole thing of making people feel uncomfortable. What you're doing is forcing them to feel how they're lacking integrity to begin with. And integrity is probably really hard for them. So when you come back at them with your own integrity with yourself, it can be an uncomfortable feel. Evil doesn't like when the truth about evil is revealed. Lower vibrational people often don't like the truth of a higher vibrational person when it's obviously true. To the evil person, it feels evil. So the lower in vibration you go, lies feel good. The higher in vibration you go, truth feels good. And when a lower vibrational person does some sort of violation or psychic attack on you and you agree, you go, it's okay, now you're at their vibe. But if you stay at your vibe and you go, hey, that's not okay, your vibe is going to make the lower vibe person feel uncomfortable. Deal with it. You deal with it, they deal with it, just deal with it. When you go, oh, I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable, now you've lowered your vibe. So I want to say one more thing about expressing your anger in a way where it doesn't become verbal attack, where you're not losing your cool, you know? This is the big thing where I think people have difficulty with expressing their anger. They only know how to use anger as a manipulative tool where they go back and forth being the low vibe violator. Um, well, number one, it takes practice. And you really have to trust yourself. And you can't allow yourself to be gaslighted. And you just really, 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 really need to practice. So many people are out of control, you know? So when you're out of control, if you express your anger, it's going to be out of control. You just have to practice and like discipline, self-control, willpower, those are just priceless. And if you have those things, you can express your anger without giving that other person some sort of psychic attack from you to them, without dumping your feelings of frustration on them. Um, you can express your anger with integrity. And I think that is what an adult should be able to do. All right. So that is today's talk on anger and making people feel uncomfortable. There's already discomfort. You're just calling it for what it is and not moving your spot to agree with the other person's lie. Yeah. Okay. So thanks for listening. See you next time. I do give one-on-one sessions. Bye.